Thank you. Obviously, we are here to talk about the shiny new 4K release of Eraser. How do you think that this version compares to other releases that there've been? Because I think I've still got the VHS somewhere.
Eraser has had many lives, I'm happy to say. First of all, I'm delighted that there's so much interest that Warner Brothers wanted to do this. And I was in there at the studio helping them make it right. I think it's great for the original director to get in and make sure the movie's lives up to its legacy. But the look of the film, the Dolby Atmos mix of the film makes it bigger and bolder than ever. It's not just hype, it looks gorgeous. So I was happy to revisit the film as well because I haven't looked at Eraser in years, and seeing it again, uh, just besides being overwhelmed by the amount of work all that physical production was, I was proud of everybody in it. I think they all did a great job. It's a remarkable cast. The physical stunts are amazing. And this was an era where we had, I think, the best balance between approaching everything with real locations and real physical stunts and using CGI as an enhancement. CGI was still pretty new. But for suspense and performance, action is character. Action is part of the performance. And if you've got your principal actors, and Arnold can do his own stunt work and prefers to do it, not the super scary stuff. He's too valuable for that. But we have our stunt specialists who are experts. Um, but to use Arnold and to support his brand, but moving forward by surrounding him with great actors, that was the impression I got seeing again. I was very happy with the film.
Mm. I think one of the things that like the UHDs especially, it's all about, one of the great things is, the whole the dynamic blacks, and you've got your whole sequence, in the zoo, which is obviously sort of like set as as night's just approaching. I mean, that must look, fantastic. And obviously there's the airplane sequence again is at night. So I mean, those scenes in particular must really pop now that we've got this.
Thank you. Yeah, it looks amazing. Adam Greenberg, who shot that, was just wonderful. Also did, I think, T2 for Jim Cameron. Adam is one of the great action cinematographers.
Mm. I mean, sort of getting into the film. Prior to directing Eraser, you'd done kind of a couple of horror films, you'd done a comedy. They all had action components to them, but what was it about, this story that made you decide that it was time to kind of, fully venture into, this action arena?
I knew I would have all the bells and whistles with Arnold. The studio was passionate about getting the film made. Arnold brought the script to me directly, and I thought, well, if I'm ever going to do a straight up action film, this will be it. And I was right. I mean, it's really directing an action film is a little bit like being the ringmaster of a very big circus. The focus for me has to stay on the character-based part of the story, but you also have to balance a very large crew, a lot of trucks, and action that's potentially dangerous. It has to be designed carefully.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously this came out during, Arnie's, big heyday, this is, mid 90s, he's done Terminator 2, he's done True Lies, he's done all of these things. What was he like as a collaborator? Because I know that this is, seen his Netflix documentary that this is a guy that he doesn't just come and turn up and read the lines, he likes to be involved,
Oh,
quite hands-on.
he's really smart guy, great businessman. So well, he became governor. So he has a producer head on his shoulders. And he really, as he brought the project to me, so that was already kind of an advantage. We got along very well. But I had to engage him in getting the budget and schedule we needed because the original script didn't have the crazier action scenes. The original script was pretty traditional handgun play and fist fighting, which was, it's an interesting kind of film to do with Arnold. But after True Lies, I really wanted to do something in the action genre I hadn't seen before. So I had to engage him almost as a producer to present what we wanted to do to the studio, and he helped me get it approved. So he was an incredible partner off the set and on the set.
Nice. And you mentioned Adam Greenberg before, him and Arnold had, previously worked together. How did that relationship help on the shoot? Because I'm guessing you've got a DP that has worked with an actor before. They must kind of have that almost like shorthand to be able to to get certain shots without kind of stepping on each other's toes almost.
Well, I'm there's a bit of a triangle, so I'm very involved in that. But Adam Greenberg is, how can I put this? A brilliant DP. but just extremely supportive of the director and a very sweet man. So he's fun to be with, you know. And when you're doing big macho set pieces, soft-spoken Adam Greenberg was a wonderful balance amongst us. So he had Arnold's trust. Arnold knew Adam would make him look good, and that gets you way ahead of the game on moving through the day on a set.
Mm. Yeah, you don't want your actor worrying about how, are they going to get their side? But obviously Adam knowing
There was almost
already.
none of that with Arnold. I don't know what he would have been like with another DP, but Arnold's what you see is what you get. Arnold's a very confident guy, and that's a pleasure in an actor. Some of them are a little more insecure and take a little more time just to help them feel comfortable in what we're doing that day. And Arnold would charge into it and say, what's up? Where's my mark? What are we doing now? And he knew the script very well though, because I'd done a couple of rewrites and we'd collaborated on that.
And, an action movie is only ever as good as its set pieces, and Eraser has some brilliant ones, I've already mentioned, the plane, the zoo, anything involving the railgun, which one gave you the biggest headache to make and which one kind of looking back at you proudest that you kind of pushed through and got made?
Problem is, I love doing this stuff. So it's going to sound like I'm not telling the truth, but I am. To me, if I have the right tools and I feel we've designed things to be done safely, then it's a pure joy. The airplane thing was the toughest because it involves so many different kinds of filmmaking that had to cut together. From live action with the principal, Arnold dropped I don't know how many feet on a rappelling rig. It was the highest stage in Warner Brothers to come straight at camera to create him looking like him falling out of a plane. We had remarkable world-class parachutists who were just experts. And even then, one of the guys really got caught up in the parachute, which was scripted as a tearaway shoot, and it was tearaway. But the velocity, he explained to me later, the velocity was so extreme. You'll see Arnold's character struggling to get out of the parachute as he free falls. That gentleman was really struggling. So there's a sense of danger around real physical staging of stunts and real physical locations. We require less and less of that, but I always try to do as much as I can physically on a set because the impact is just different for the audience.
Yeah, no, definitely. And one of the strongest elements, for me is, your character of Lee, although, she needs John's help in the situation that she's in from like a logistical point of view. She's not the stereotypical damsel that, was in a lot of films at that time. Why was it important for you that this character have her own agency?
Again, I wanted to support Arnold's brand, but I wanted to take it further. So I didn't want the typical damsel in distress who was falling in love with the character from day one, and Vanessa was just projects so much intelligence and strength. I wanted someone that matched Arnold in intelligence and strength. It also happens to be beautiful, which helps. But the fact is, it was unusual casting at the time to have somebody that remarkable uh, uh, who wasn't just a damsel in distress, and no one touched it as like Vanessa did. So she was challenged. It was her first big studio leading role, and she'd done some other work and been Miss America. But I'd watched what she'd done and had a great deal of respect for the woman. She really had stood up for herself in her career, and she was a joy to work with. Super intelligent, great actress.
And also, you also gave James Caan his first action role. He'd done a lot of sort of like dramas and things before this. And then, here you are, you've got one of your biggest names in action, and then, one of, the generation's, best actors going, toe to toe. I mean, how was that like watching these two, kind of heavyweights in their
I,
own fields
I fought hard
work
to get
together?
I fought hard to get that cast. I wanted an, a surprisingly high quality cast around Arnold in an action movie. So getting Jimmy Caan was essential. Vanessa Williams was another one who, again, brought something else to an action movie you don't normally see. And let's not forget James Coburn, who the younger audience may not know. This gentleman was an epic action character from the original Magnificent Seven and The Great Escape. He literally trained with Bruce Lee and became one of Bruce's best friends and pallbearers. This guy was a man's man icon in Hollywood for years before all this. So I thought having them all together in a movie with Arnold would be special, and it is.
And you must have had some then, therefore, all of these, fantastic characters that have had these long histories. There must be some great stories, when it was downtime. You must have learned so much from them all.
I'm I'm always kind of, I'm the guy prepping the next shot as soon as the first one's done. So I wasn't hanging out as much. Although Arnold always had a couple of good friends around him. They tried to teach him how to smoke cigars, which was pretty hysterical because I can't smoke it. I cough immediately. I've never smoked cigarettes or anything. So trying to macho it up with Arnold and his men was some of the most fun I had. But there was a great deal of respect because Arnold knew I knew what I was doing and kept him safe. So there was a lot of respect there and encouraging his performance. So I mean, it wasn't a show with pranks because this level of action and doing it physically in real time takes so much focus. So that was probably going on around me, but I didn't notice as much as I might have.
Eraser, it's kind of viewed as one of the last great action movies of that golden era. How do you think that the genre has changed and developed over time?
Well, obviously, culturally, everybody's a lot more sensitive. So some things that I boldly enjoyed doing, you'd be more cautious about, I suppose, these days. I personally am like aware of that, but going back to the Blob. Shawnee Smith was the one with the AK-47 at the end of the movie. So I was raised by strong women, and I like those in my films. But I think that the '90s had a gutsiness about it was ingrained because of the amount of live action work we were doing, and a little less cynical storytelling. These films are edgy by nature, but we're allowed to give the audience a good time and potentially at least a half happy ending. So I think people know that they're to be entertained with less political messages than the subsequent films. And they're, nothing against those kind of films. There's wonderful, thought-provoking films, but those films were really designed as engines to just thoroughly entertain you. And I think the audience appreciates our hearts are in those films. And the ones that remain and stand alone, I'm a particular fan of Jim Cameron's work and know him well. The This work it stands up over the years, interestingly enough. I'm honored to be truthful.
Mm. Obviously we're here talking about, Razor's 30th birthday, but next year, 2027 marks your, 40 years since your directorial debut. You're still consistently making movies. What is it about directing that you enjoy so much?
God, there's nothing like it. I mean, there's this weird sense I had since I was a young man of running away to join the circus. Because in Chicago, I didn't know a lot of people that were doing this job. And each film takes you into a different world. It's a world we design, but it's also you get this experience. If you're doing a Western, you're around cowboys. I mean, these things. I'm doing action movie. I'm around action experts and people that know their way around guns. Filmmaking requires everything from truck drivers to ballerinas on any one film, and there's nothing like it. And the kind of dysfunctional family that comes together for whatever 3 or 6 months while you make a film, it's a unique experience. Then sitting and watching a film with an audience that doesn't know I'm there, and even audiences in different countries, is just a thrill. If my films can communicate, it can make people laugh, as The Mask did in a few different cultures. It can make people scream, and that's another kind of catharsis on my horror films. Or if it could just thrill them in a horror film, that's what keeps me going. And honestly, the opportunity to work with new actors. And I come from theater originally, and it's working with new performers is like a chemistry set. We don't know how far we can take them. As a director, that's the most exciting thing for me.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for your time. Here's to another 30 years of Eraser and, whatever format it may come out on, in that time. I guess it'll be like being digitally downloaded into our brains or something by that point, but
That's not a good idea. Don't do that.
But thank you so much for your time. And before I go, I have to say thank you for Dream Warriors. And one of my friends, You're the Blob is like her all-time favorite movie just ever. So it'd be
Thank you.
remiss of me to not pass that along.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.